The following video is not suited for children.
Oh, hey there. As you can see, I came back to Earth, only to find everything on lockdown because of some deadly virus, so looks like I'll be cooped up in here for the long haul. If you're hungry, I've got 3.5 tins of beans left. I got toilet paper too, like hundreds of rolls. I don't really know why I bought that much. It's more than I'll ever need in my life, so I hit 100 subscribers. Hooray, that's impressive, right? I mean, thank you one and all for sticking with me for like 2 years. I would go out and celebrate, but look, I know it's a shit situation out there, but there's not a whole lot we can do right now. So we're just gonna have to grit our teeth and push through this. I mean, all we need to do is stay at home, but that's miles more boring than you'd expect when you're alone in a bunker. I'll tell you what we need. Some nostalgia. You know that warm, comforting feeling you get from watching your favourite childhood movie or playing with some old toys you have lying around? That's what we need right now. Just to settle us down a bit. I figure I talk about movies I don't like a lot, so let's flip that over. What about something I love, something I hold close to my heart? Allow me, if you will, to take you on a warm and comforting journey back in time, to a time where the world was simpler, when love and music were still free, and the only real concern was the ever-present threat of total nuclear annihilation at the hands of two global superpowers having a political dick measuring contest. Let us go back to the early days of British television, and let us partake in some nostalgic gold. Imagine, if you will, a small railway. Not a big or important railway, just a little railway in the top left-hand corner of Wales. Imagine a little old shop window, with various dolls, toys and other things, and a saggy old cloth cat dozing happily beside it. Imagine a quiet but still strange little planet, with little pink mice men pottering around going about their day. These are all shows made by one little company many years ago, SmallFilms, the work of two men who, for 27 years, told stories to children. They were Oliver Postgate and Peter Firmin, and they laid the foundation on which all British children's television now sits. They made such classics as Bagboss, the Clangers, Noggin the Nog, and Ivor the Engine, shows which are all held dearly in the hearts of many people. But how did they come around? It all started way back in 1957 with our dear friend Richard Oliver Postgate. He joined the Home Guard at the age of 17 in 1942, but refused to fight in the war as a conscientious objector. This ended up with him working on farms in Britain and as a social relief worker for the Red Cross in occupied Germany until 1948. After returning home, he attended drama school, but ended up drifting from job to job, never really finding his niche, eventually becoming a stage manager for the newly developing ITV. He worked mostly on children's programs, but always felt that he could produce better programs himself through the low budgets they were given. He wrote Alexander the Mouse, a story about a mouse that was born to be a king, and asked Peter Firmin to create the characters and backgrounds. At the time, Peter was teaching at the Central School of Art when Oliver came looking for someone to illustrate a television story who, quote, was hard up and would do a lot of drawing for very little money. He said yes, and the show was aired for 26 episodes. The show had some problems with production as they were using a magnet board to move the characters around, but despite that it was received very well. Postgate then made another show for deaf children called The Journey of Master Ho, which did quite well too. This led to the stage being set for SmallFilms. In 1959, Firmin and his wife moved into a small farmhouse that had a disused cowshed behind it. Both he and Postgate converted it into a small studio where they could work, and from it came the first program made by SmallFilms, Ivor the Engine. It was a 6-part story about a little steam train that wanted to sing in a choir, with Firmin drawing the characters and backgrounds, and Postgate writing, narrating and animating it. ITV loved it and wanted more, but Postgate simply said the story was told and there would be no more Ivor. However, they had another story called Noggin the Nog. ITV wasn't too keen, but the BBC was, and aired it later that year. From there, SmallFilms made shows for both ITV and the BBC, all aimed at children. And let me make it very clear to you, for the most part it was just Oliver Postgate and Peter Firmin making these shows. They continued how they started, with Peter creating the backgrounds and characters and with Oliver writing, narrating, editing and animating it all. Despite this, they stuck to their craft, being able to produce roughly 2 minutes of animated footage a day, almost 10 times more than most other studios. Even today, that's impressive.
Impossible, I don't believe it. It isn't true.
The biggest reason Oliver had to thank was the special camera rig he built himself to film the journey of Master Ho with. It was a second-hand film camera he had taken apart and adjusted with pieces of Meccano and rubber bands and bits of metal to be used to shoot stop-frame animation, as he couldn't afford an appropriate camera on the budget they had. It originally sat in the corner of his bedroom, hanging over the table that the characters would be animated on, attached to a cobbled-together rig he called the Ostrich. With his wife being pregnant with twins, moving the rig into the cowshed was definitely a priority. Once they were set up in the cowshed, Postgate had the unique idea of filming a show outside. Furman helped make some little knitted penguin dolls and Postgate took them around the farm, filming the lives of the penguins. While he liked the idea, he learned a hard lesson about filming stop-motion animation outdoors. Quote, "Dear friends, let me offer you an injunction. Do not ever try to film stop-frame filming out of doors. I spent hours standing like Job, shaking my fist at the heavens as the sun scurried in and out among the clouds. Because, of course, the changes of light had the effect of flashing neon lights on the stop-frame exposures. Lessons learned, he made an outdoor set indoors when he started making the slightly creepy-looking Pogles of Pogles wood. In 1969, the BBC started broadcasting in colour, and with the space race, it made sense for Postgate to make something fitting of the time. Enter one of SmallFilms' most famous creations, the Clangers. It was bizarre, weird, and on the surface seemed to be a load of nonsense, but slowly became a staple of British television. The story for most episodes was that something would crash on the Clangers' little planet, they would investigate, and either fix it or find something to do with it. The very surreal alien world mixed with Postgate's narration made the show a hit, although people would often ask if he was on hallucinogenic drugs while writing it. Furman himself said, "People used to say, 'Oh, what's Oliver on with all these weird ideas?' And we used to say, 'He's on cups of tea and biscuits.'" And then in 1974, Postgate and Furman introduced the world to Bagboss. An old cloth cat that would sit in the window of a little girl's shop. Every episode, Emily, the little girl that owned the shop, would find something that someone had lost and place it in the window for it to be found again. Bagpuss and his friends would figure out what it was, clean it, and fix it. Then Bagpuss would tell a story related to the item, while the mice on the mouse organ would play a little song. Keeping in mind, nothing like this had ever been done before. At the time, all these shows were very new ideas and concepts that no one had ever really thought of. And as weird and childish as all these programs sound, they weren't 100% aimed at children. And that's what makes them worth their weight in nostalgic gold. Postgate knew that what he was writing had to be approved by adults for children, and the best way to be approved would be to make something that both adults and children could enjoy. As such, the shows were not only loved by the people that approved them, but grown-ups and children alike would watch them. And there are plenty of jokes for adults to enjoy hidden in the shows, even in Ivor the Engine.
I'll climb up and fetch them.
Oh! Oh, Mr. Jones!
I didn't see you there, Miss Price. I beg your...
The Clangers by far had some of the better ones. All the lines of dialogue said by the characters were fully scripted. Then Postgate and Furman would sit in a sound booth with slide whistles, reading them out and making noises to suit the structure of the words. This gave Postgate the chance to slip in some naughty words without directly saying them.
so sodded the bloody thing stuck again. Got into trouble for that.
But what makes them stand up, even today almost 60 years on, was Oliver's attitude towards the story's worlds. He had a strong prejudice against fantasy for the sake of fantasy, so every story and every world he created followed the laws of physics and the set rules that were made for them. Even the Clangers made sense on a fundamental level. It's all a mix of the fantastic and the mundane that makes it all so lovable. The Clangers are a bunch of weird aliens finding and building things, but even their garage door still jams. Ivor the engine wants to sing in a choir, but the company that owns the railway doesn't see the point in wasting money on a new whistle for him. Even Welsh dragons help herd sheep when they need to. Hell, there was even that one episode of Noggin the Nog that was a big metaphor for the nuclear arms race. Why am I telling you all this? It's because I wanted to take some time and show some appreciation to two men that didn't just make children's programs because they were paid to, but because they wanted to make something better even on a shoestring budget. The attitude that Postgate showed towards his writing is what made their work so fantastic, and it's sad that it's rarely seen anymore. With children's television now dominated by shows that are all mad shapes and colours or solely made to sell model trains, it feels so nice to just take a step back and watch something that's simpler. Just the day-to-day life of a little steam train on a quiet little railway. A few small toys trying to fix a ship in a bottle. Heck, even some knitted birds pottering around a farm. Something that wasn't made by a massive team of conflicting ideas all grinding out the same thing, but something that two men in a small shed in Kent sat down and made. Not because they had to or wanted money, but because they wanted to make something worth more than what they were being paid to make. They didn't have fancy puppets or well-made model trains, but they didn't need them. The Clangers were just made from Meccano and wool, but they're still Clangers. Ivor the engine and Jones the steam are just cardboard cutouts, but you're still sad that he can't be part of the choir. Bagboss is just a tatty old cloth cat, but that doesn't make him less magical. Goodest Boy Award just feels out of place here, because there's no questioning how monumental these men were in the early days of television. Oliver Postgate was a great man that threw his life into these stories because he loved the work he did, and Peter Furman was a marvellous artist that helped not only Oliver live in these worlds, but allowed him to invite us into them. Their work puts them beyond any award I could give them. The only thing I can really do to honour them would be to tell all of you who are watching to just watch some of their stuff. Most of it's on YouTube and I cannot recommend it more, especially with so much on everyone's mind right now. Yeah, some of the jokes may not have aged well, and sure, sometimes the animation looks a bit wonky, but it's not about that. It's about letting yourself be taken into a world that's much simpler. Worlds where there's no stress or outside anxieties. Just a place where you can enjoy some peace and quiet and listen to a simple story, even if it's just for 5 minutes. Take a step back, find some quiet time, and just let yourself get lost in the massive worlds of small films.